the OLC YouTube channel. If you go to bit.ly, the URL shortening service, bit.ly/YouTube OLC, bit.ly/YouTube OLC, and you'll find this and other stuff at some point. So you can kind of cross-promote, find all your stuff. But that's not what we're here to talk about. So Cali Morrison, Whitney Kilgore, Mary Nemec, who's invisible at the...
We miss you, Mary.
We miss you, Mary.
Somewhere. She's neither here nor there. Well, she's probably there, but she's not here. And they've been leading a conversation here at this conference about, and I was fascinated by this juxtaposition, innovation amidst complexity, complex environments, complex situations, complex something. I thought that complexity and innovation, those two go together like peanut butter and jelly or peanut butter and chocolate or
peanut butter and Nutella.
Yeah, like that. So I just thought, hey, let's have a conversation. And so can I just ask, what has drawn you into juxtaposing or unbundling innovation and complexity? Can I just ask you that?
I'd say every time we have a conversation, our situations are different, our paradigms are different. Every institution is different. And so we usually talk about innovation in that context. So it didn't seem innovative to talk about complexity when it comes to innovation, right? So it just made sense.
And we wanted to have a conversation with others, our peers, so we can learn from each other, right? Because we're not claiming to have all the answers and how you lead innovation in a complex world. We're claiming to want to start that conversation with others like us who are struggling through these, muddling through these.
This whole new track at OLC to do a conversation, not a presentation. This is a kind of what sparked it really for us. So I just recently went to a different conference with a different acronym, and I took my daughter with me because we were on spring break, and we were walking down the hallway, and she said, "Mom, why are all the chairs in rows facing forward?"
Right.
And I said, "Don't worry. Mommy presents at conferences where people talk to each other, not just the person at the front of the room." So I think that's part of our motivation here too.
Right.
That's good. That's good. So we talked beforehand about trying to actually do that very thing right here, right? Yeah. So you fortunate folks who are joining us live are going to be drawn in, just like I am, into this conversation with Cali and Whitney about this topic. So could you maybe just throw the door open, could you maybe guide us through some principles and processes that might help us be more successful innovating in our institutional contexts?
For sure.
Yeah, you want to alternate?
That sounds perfect. Yeah. So we started off using a framework we found out of the Harvard Business Review as a way to guide the conversation. And so for the first stage of this review, they place it at idea generation and mobilization. So this is really where you rally the troops, right? This is where you get people to be excited about your idea and give them the freedom to explore the idea before you actually make them move on the idea, right? And then the second half of it is, you're moving it to a socialization stage where you're getting others to buy into what you're doing.
So does that first stage include both maybe the brainstorming phase as well as the kind of, you've got it now you've on the back, you've normed the idea, like forming, norming, storming, transforming kind of thing, that it exists, and now you're going to circulate it.
Well, and you're going to find the people who can benefit from this, and how do we get them to share in this idea and help us, bring it up to the next level, right? So you're not asking them to advocate, which will kick to Whitney, but you're asking them to buy into the idea, get familiar with it so that they can live with it and move it on to the next stage. I think that, these stages are kind of fluid, especially in these first few. You go back and forth between them because you're identifying who will be your advocates, and then you're moving forward to ask them to do that.
Yeah, and you can have the best idea in the world, but if it only works in 10% of the organization and it's not scalable, often we get into the paralysis by analysis, and we get stuck in pilots. Right. So scaling innovation is a big part of the conversation that we hope to have.
Yep.
And really it's about the folks around the tables having these conversations about how they're doing it, where they're getting stuck, so that it truly is a conversation. So the next step, and we're doing this tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
Just,
Awesome.
I mean, so what we expect to unfold is then groups of individuals are going to start talking about how they take it from that phase into advocacy, and really trying to test the ideas to make sure that they understand whether or not it has that potential to scale. So can they stand behind these ideas, sell them, socialize them, and basically sell them internally to be able to take them to marketing, and does it meet the audience needs? Right. Yeah.
And that's where they go on to experimentation, right? Where we don't want to get stuck.
Yeah.
I think we get stuck there a lot in higher ed, right? We try something, we see something cool, we're like, I'm going to try this. It's going to be awesome. It's going to rock the whole institution's world. And then we get stuck in some pilot phase that doesn't get enough support, doesn't get enough behind it. And so we don't actually get people to use it at scale. So the experimentation phase is where we're looking to not just pilot, but move beyond that. And that's hard.
Yeah, and I think that there's a piece here where I've seen institutions, as they're trying to scale something, bring faculty groups together to talk about what worked, what didn't, lessons learned kind of sessions, so that you can generate some buzz, some interest, but then also not replicate mistakes. Right. So we all get better if we're having these conversations together.
Well, if we're having them together, right?
Yeah.
So I might learn something different than you would learn, than Kelvin would learn. But if we can talk openly about that, then, I can avoid the mistakes that you guys have already made. I mean, and you can avoid the mistakes I've already made. But I think sometimes we have the social media effect, right? Where we show the pretty and the glossy and the happy and the shiny, and we kind of like push the tarnished pieces behind us.
Yeah.
So we have to, I loved yesterday's session where they shared all the failures. We all have those, right? And we can learn from each other's. So that's one thing that has to happen in that little phase, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And then taking it to market. Okay, so from like a business perspective, because this is an HBR methodology, right? From a business perspective, if you're going to take something to market and commercialize it, there has to be demand for it in the marketplace, right? Or it doesn't scale. But think about it inside higher education as you're going to be pitching it to your educational community, whether that's in your College of Business or nursing or across the entire faculty population, if you're truly going to scale something like you do at UCF all the time. And it takes, after the experimentation, kind of kicking the tires, sharing the failures, but also this cost benefit analysis.
Yes.
Is there going to be a return on investment? Because if there's not, you're scaling failure. For the organization, because no institution can keep their doors open if that program, project, what have you, doesn't generate revenue.
But in higher education, we also have to think about a return on investment not just being monetary.
Absolutely.
We also have to think about what is the learning gain, right? What is that, and what are we getting back for that in that investment? If it costs us more, but our students learn better and can progress better and are retained better, then it's a soft money then, right? So there's that soft reward that we have to account for, which is squishy and really hard to account for. But I think in this stage, we also kind of have to think about that as part of our, use case, ROI.
Yeah, no, I'm totally with you. And I think some of the really cool innovations that are happening in our space are happening where institutions are partnering with companies, right? If I think back to the Georgia Tech, AT&T, scalable master's degree, right? If you look at pockets like that, it's not just commercialization, it's looking at who needs the student after they're done, what do they need them to be able to do, and can we create that pipeline for them, right? And then it's a win-win on every side of the...
It really is. So that's a good example of employer partnership, talking to each other. Just small things.
Workforce type development projects. Yeah, your favorite.
Yeah. It is one of my favorites.
I know. We were just talking about it in the hallway.
And then finally, the biggest thing is, how do you get the last stage they have is diffusion and implementation, which in higher education looks like, how do we get this out to our students and our faculty? And how do we get them to actually use it? How do we charge them more for it? Do they, what does that mean? It's a little different in higher ed. We're not going to roll out the Amazon Prime version where you've got to pay the $75 or $90, whatever it is now, I don't know, a year. in order to, access that other service. But how do we get users to use, and I can use an example here. So we have partnered with Portfolium for our e-portfolios and some career services. Now the thing is, a lot of courses aren't requiring it yet, but how do we get students to accept this implementation and start using it? And we're seeing pretty good usage, but how do we get that further out, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's one that we get stuck in also, is that somebody loves it and they've set it up really well and they use it really well in this very small pocket, when there's potential for, and I'm not talking about just Portfolio, but anything, there's potential for it to be used on such a wider scale by your students, where they could benefit from it. So that's what that last stage is getting those people in the door, or their butts in the seats, you know what I mean? So
to speak.
Or their butts online, or
they're virtual heinies and virtual chairs.
Get your digital bum to class.
Well, but do something with that, I think.
Right?
That's
Do a little AR, VR. You got your.
Sure.
I saw one yesterday where they do Facebook Spaces with avatars and headsets. The Oculus or whatever. So you actually virtually interact with others in your class as avatars, exploring. I don't know. They were on like the Colorado River, exploring the Colorado River, right?
Yeah,
pretty cool.
Very cool.
We live in a cool time. Yeah.
It's cool. I haven't read Ready Player One yet. I've seen the movie. I have not read the book, but I heard a podcast not long ago which podcast was this? Might have been the EdSurge podcast. I can't remember now, but there was an interview with a couple of faculty who made use of science fiction literature and prototyping projects. And they got into this side conversation about this section of the book, Ready Player One, where the main character goes to school in the virtual reality environment, and how much better that was because there's not all the noise, right? All the classroom management, all the drama, all the whatever. Everybody's there, quote unquote, there, because they want to be there, they want to learn stuff, and it's all signal, no noise, really, in a sense. And my daughter's taking her second virtual class right now, and we've talked about that it's a better, more focused environment for her because it's all signal, no noise. It's not all the drama that she has in her face-to-face classes. So just as that's a total tangent, but no, interesting,
but related, right? Because so you find students that's a better model for, and how do you get them to use and recognize that that's a better model? Right? I mean, I have, and I think for some things, right, my kids, I think for some things, an online environment, a virtual environment where they're very focused will be better for them. But for other parts of their life, they need,
the social interaction.
Exactly.
The human interaction.
Right.
Yeah.
But how do we get parents and we get employers and we get, just how do we get those of us who don't live and breathe in this every day, how do we get them to understand how that could benefit? Right? I mean, I had a huge debate with one of my friends who is an ex-middle school teacher last weekend about the value of online K-12.
Sure.
Yeah. My oldest daughter, or older daughter, because I've got three of them.
Yeah.
One in the middle. The one that's 18 is still living at home. She's taking fully online classes now and saving up to move to New York and be a Broadway star.
Nice.
That's going to happen.
Okay.
So, but in high school, she was required to take some online classes. And she got to the point in her senior year where she said, I only want to go to school for choir and theater. Why can't I take everything else online?
Yeah.
I mean, I really need to be there for choir and theater.
There's purpose in the physical presence for those two situations.
Absolutely. Yeah, but now she's excelling in online learning in college because she was actually put in that position in high school.
Sure.
And I don't know if that's going to become more the norm.
Yeah.
I know there's several states that require that high school students take at least 2 classes online.
Yeah.
And I think that that's going to continue to kind of really drive adoption for students, help them be, ramped up and ready to go, but then hopefully also flip the paradigm. So we're not saying, should we go online? We're saying, how soon do we need to be online, and why aren't we already there?
Maybe part of this is I've been following Alex Pickett from SUNY for a while on her, what I would maybe frame as her criticalist perspective on innovation. She's been challenging for a couple of years the use of the term innovation. Why is innovation a thing? Alex and I haven't talked about this, but I think it's a good question. Tom Kavanaugh from UCF and I have been dabbling with an innovation-related framework for a couple of years that we call FIRST, FIRRST. And in that, we have a book chapter on this, and we talked about just operationally, innovation is making things better. Right. So that's a thing. But from a criticalist kind of lens here, from what we're talking, better for whom?
Right.
Yeah, better for all. Yeah. Ultimately, that's right. The goal.
And so that's kind of the pitch, right? And this very applied kind of thing that we're talking about talking to teachers or to parents or to kids, students. This can be better for you for some purpose, right? And so hopefully that's what our innovation is all about, right? Not just change for change's sake.
Right.
Do things different.
Because that's just putting lipstick on the pig.
Yeah, that's never a good idea, right? But innovation does also mean different things at different institutions.
Yes, that's right.
So for a UCF, it's going to be pushing the envelope and probably sending students into space. I mean, you guys are doing incredible things. You're doing incredible things.
Depends on the student.
There are institutions. There are institutions that are further behind.
Yeah.
And so for them, innovation is being here, being a part of the conversation, and thinking about what's next for their institution. So I think part of this conversation is probably going to be to make sure that those who have experience leading innovation can have conversations with those who haven't. And so we're going to work really hard to make sure that we've got a good mix at each of the tables so that conversation will be a little more fluid.
That's right. Did you want to throw the citation out from the Harvard Business Review? Folks wanted more information about this framework.
Yeah, should we tweet it out?
I think we can do both because not everybody on the video feed will get the other.
Yeah, so it's a Sloan review, and it is called The 5 Stages of Successful Innovation.
Yeah, and it came from an original research study that was in the Innovation. There's actually a journal called Innovation.
Cool.
So one word, right? One word. That's it. Cool. So it was actually in that. So we can tweet those out.
Yeah, awesome.
So
that's a good thing.
It was interesting to see the take, just in my academic mindset here, to see the take that the author from the HBR article, the Sloan Review article, we said Harvard. I said Harvard.
It's okay.
I said Harvard.
MIT and Harvard, they're neighbors. They like each other.
They like each other. Woo.
So the Sloan Management Review.
Yes. At MIT. So my bad. Sorry Harvard. Sorry Sloan. Sorry MIT.
They'll get over it.
Yeah. They don't pay attention to me anyway. But it was interesting to see her take on the actual article and what they chose to include and what they chose not to include. Because I mean, it's like a 25-page article
turned into a
3-page article. So
something
I was intrigued. But we had to go. I went back into it to draw more out of the stage 5, right? Because there wasn't a lot on stage 5 in the MIT article, but in the actual research journal article, there was a lot. So it's interesting what people put value on.
Why do you think
right?
they did take out so much, leave so little in about that last stage?
This is total speculation, complete and utter speculation, but having been a journalism major, it may have literally been space. Right? Because when this was published, was it 2007? It was actually probably printed. Right? Yeah. So, that was one of my speculations in doing that. I don't think that there was, it didn't leave a lot out, but it just left a little to be questioned. So, and more depth to be brought forward.
There you go.
So as we start to wrap up, I would invite anybody who is online, if you've got questions or comments in the chat that you want to bring up or you want to put on your mic and ask a question or make a comment, we'd welcome that. So feel free to jump in. And I don't know, maybe Dave, you could take a look and see if there's anything in the chat, just in case, so we don't miss anybody. Dave Goodrich on the keys, ladies and gentlemen.
They can't see. But Dave is like pretending like he's playing the piano over here. So it's pretty sweet.
Impressive.
Yeah, in Music City,
Yes.
it's very well done.
Very appropriate.
It was nice.
Yeah.
But while folks are maybe thinking about making statements, Whitney and Cali, do you have any, like, if I'm at an institution, I'm thinking about it in the early stages, it's really more, I've got a need.
Yep.
And I'm thinking, I got to make some things better in this space.
Yeah.
What's your one takeaway piece of advice from this framework, this 5 stages? Where could I start? How could this help me?
Well, okay, so here's the very first thing you have to do is identify your problem, right? And frame that. Because so many people are like, something's not right. We're going to throw a solution at it.
Yes.
They don't figure out what the problem is first. They just throw a solution and see if that works.
Right.
And looking at Twitter today, I saw some questions about tools. Right? What tools would I introduce to faculty? And I think if you lead with tools, right? And I think it was Kevin O'Neill maybe said it's like using the wrong end of the hammer. Right? And it's a good point. I mean, we've really got to understand, what do you want to be able to accomplish, right? Before you start ideating on what that could be, what the solution could be.
I think that's very crystallizing, catalytic, and I don't know, something else, copacetic. I don't know. It's my favorite. It's my favorite phoneme. Whichever. Dave, anything from the online sphere?
Not yet.
No.
All right. Well, I guess as we get close to wrapping up, I'll say, Cali Morrison, Whitney Kilgore, thanks for joining us. This is our inaugural, you may know, OLC Live here at OLC Innovate 2018. We're hoping to have more of this, enhancing the virtual experience for virtual participants and open up to the world and just give a little glimpse, open a window, let people see the wonderfulness that is
the sparkle.
We'll see the sparkle.
Look behind the curtains.
That's right.
Yeah.
Lots of jazz hands.
There's been a lot of
all the jazz hands.
It's very true. Coming up in the next couple of minutes, if you're with us synchronously here, we have Clark Shaw Nelson, one of our program co-chairs for OLC Innovate, who will be joining John Stewart in just a few minutes. So if you're on, hang on. We'll take a brief break. We'll put up the URLs and the agenda and so forth, and you'll see that. And we'll be back in just a couple of minutes. And I forget what's coming up after that, but hey, you'll see it. I think we've got another live field correspondent segment with Dave Goodrich, ladies and gentlemen.
All right.
Our man everywhere. Right now he's in the studio, but he's everywhere. That's right. So we'll take a brief break and we'll be right back. Thanks again.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us. Lots of fun.
Always fun.